conquer you, but to make your punishment not as severe, if you don't resist them, then they won't kill you and they won't burn the city down. You'll still be captured, but it won't be as bad, right? Of course, they didn't listen. They barred themselves in there behind the walls of Jerusalem, and here comes the Babylonians, and they're not too happy about that. They laid siege to it, and a big battle breaks out, and a lot of them die. And they end up tearing the walls of Jerusalem down, destroying everything. King Zedekiah runs away from the Babylonians when he sees that the jig is up. He runs, and he makes it a pretty good distance. He gets to the plains of Jericho, but they catch him, and they end up making him watch as they execute his family, and then they put his eyes out. So it's like, we got to let you see this torment first. It's going to be the last thing that you see, and then we'll put your eyes out.
Consider it.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what they end up doing. And they take a lot of the people there in Jerusalem, they take a lot of them back to Babylon. They deport them to Babylon. They don't take everybody. They leave the poorest of the people there. They just take the most skilled and wealthy and all those kind of people over to Babylon. And the poor people are left here. And by the way, let me make this comment. This here in Jeremiah 39 actually helps you to understand Matthew chapter 24 in the New Testament. You remember Jesus talks about there will be two people at the millstone. One will be taken and another will be left. What he's talking about there in Matthew 24 is when Jerusalem was going to be destroyed by the Romans. He's saying they're going to come in here and destroy Jerusalem. Some of y'all will be taken, some of y'all will be left, meaning the Romans are going to take some of you back with them to Rome, and others are going to be left, if that makes sense. That's what that's really discussing there in Matthew 24. And Jeremiah 39 kind of helps you to understand that, if that makes sense. Anyway, so let's look at chapter 40. Jeremiah chapter 40. I'll read a little bit here to us, and then we can stop and make some comments and observations. So Jeremiah 40, starting with verse 1. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord after Nebzaradan, the captain of the guard, had let him go from Ramah, when he took him bound in chains along with all the captives of Jerusalem and Judah who were being exiled to Babylon. The captain of the guard took Jeremiah and said to him, The Lord your God pronounced this disaster against this place. The Lord has brought it about and has done as he said. Because you sinned against the Lord and did not obey his voice, this thing has come upon you. Now, behold, I release you today from the chains on your hands. If it seems good to you to come with me to Babylon, come, and I will look after you well. But if it seems wrong to you to come with me to Babylon, do not come. See, the whole land is before you. Go wherever you think is good and right to go. If you remain, then return to Gedaliah, the son of Achim, the son of Shaphan, whom the king of Babylon appointed governor of the cities of Judah, and dwell with him among the people, or go wherever you think is right to go. So the captain of the guard gave him an allowance of food and a present and let him go. Then Jeremiah went to Gedaliah, the son of Achim, at Mizpah, and lived with him among the people who were left in the land. Okay, so the captain of the Babylonian guard frees Jeremiah. The king of Babylon basically said, treat Jeremiah good, turn him loose. So that's what he does. And he tells him, he says, hey, look, you're free to go wherever you want to go. If you want to come with me to Babylon, you're more than welcome. And he says, if you come to Babylon, you'll be treated well. I'll make sure that everything goes good for you. Or you can go wherever you want. You can go back to your people there in Judah. Now he points out that a man named Gedaliah has been made governor over the area of Judah. The king of Babylon basically appointed him to take care of the people left behind there in Jerusalem, right? Because remember, chapter 39 said that the king of Babylon gave them vineyards and crops and things to grow. So those people left behind in the rubble of Jerusalem were given a job. which is kind of good, actually. It's kind of a way that they were being taken care of. So he says, you can go back to them, or you can go with me to Babylon. So a couple of things to point out. Do you have something?
When did they have no king? Nehemiah's time, was it? They had no king?
Yeah, at this point they're without a king. Yeah. They had a king, but now it's all pretty much over and done. So one thing I was thinking about the other day, when Jerusalem was destroyed, that was their earthly home that was taken away from them. And that might seem cruel to us that God would do that, but in reality it was actually good that God did that, because by taking away their earthly home, He was trying to redirect their focus onto their heavenly home. Yeah, in other words, He was trying to say, hey, look, don't be so concerned about these material things. You guys need to be focused on me, is what He was doing. Now, I'm sure some of the Jewish people could have looked at God and said to Him, how dare you do this? I mean, you had this city destroyed and many of us were killed. I don't really think you're a good God. But if they had done that, if they had sort of turned on God and started complaining, they really would have been doing that out of ignorance. I notice whenever people rail against God because some tragedy has happened, they usually do so out of ignorance. I mean, let's think about it. Why did this happen to the Jews here? Well, number one, God warned them multiple times. God gave them plenty of opportunities to avoid this. They wouldn't listen. This was a form of punishment, and it was going to be for their ultimate good. Because as you'll see, by the time you get to the New Testament, were the Jews worshiping idols anymore? Nope. This right here did a lot to break the Jews from that habit of going after idols. So this was actually going to be for their own good in the end. So if a Jewish person who had seen this destruction started complaining against God, and how can you be a good God and do all this stuff, he would have been railing against God out of ignorance. And I think it's the same thing today. When we complain against God, when we shake our fist at Him and say that He's not good, we're saying that out of ignorance. Because we can't see all ends. And there's been plenty of times in my own life where I have looked and said to myself, I wonder why God is letting this happen. Where your faith is tested. But you wait long enough, usually down the road, you start to understand that, you know what, I'm actually glad that that did happen. And I understand it a little bit better. And don't we have a song in the songbook that sings like that? Farther along, we'll understand why. Farther, that's what that song is telling us, right? We don't see all ends because we have a limited view as humans. But God can see everything. He can see the beginning and the end. And so I think we got to learn to trust God a little bit better, right? So this was a terrible thing, but it was going to bring, a lot of good for the Jewish people. And you notice here, the captain of the guard tells Jeremiah, he said, this came upon y'all because you wouldn't listen. He's basically saying here, we know that God was using us to punish you. So they recognized that they were God's instrument in this case. The Babylonians do. And I mentioned this verse to you, I think, a couple times in the past, but I could not remember exactly where it was. So I looked it up this week to find it. It's Jeremiah 27, verse 8, I think it is, if I remember right. 6 or 8, somewhere in that ballpark, where God speaks of Nebuchadnezzar, my servant, right? In other words, God was saying, I'm going to use Nebuchadnezzar. He's going to do my bidding. And that's not the only place in the Bible where you see that kind of language. The same thing was said about Cyrus, the king of Persia. In Isaiah chapter 44, God said the same thing about him. He's my servant. He's going to do my will. And I'll say this, and it might sound a little radical to you at first when you hear this, but God can use anybody to do His will. And I mean even the devil. The devil goes out and does these things, and he thinks he's just accomplishing his own will. He thinks he's just doing his own thing and that he's not helping God at all. But God can actually take the things that the devil does and use it to work His will. You say, I don't know about that. What verse of the Bible you got for that? Well, have you ever thought about the crucifixion? Like, those people who were wanting Christ crucified, that was what the devil wanted. Those evil people were doing that. And it ended up bringing about salvation, right? The devil thought he had won when he had Jesus killed, but he actually didn't. The devil beat himself, actually, if you think about it. So God can use anybody, even people that we think are wicked. God can still use that to bring about His purposes, right? And as I look at the Bible, I see that God has used, like I said, everybody under the sun to accomplish His will. He's used everything from kings to peasants to serve Him. And so what that tells me is that if God can use all those people, He can use me too. Like, none of us are outside of God being able to use, right? And I'll give you a story on that. I had a lady one time, I think she sort of doubted herself that she could serve God or teach people the gospel or anything like that. I think she kind of doubted herself. Well, one day at church, she comes up to me and she says, I got a story to tell you. She said, I was in Walmart and I met this lady that I hadn't seen for a long time. So I'm standing there in Walmart talking to her, and she said, and I don't know how this happened, but all of a sudden it just blurted out of my mouth. I just said, hey, come to church Sunday. She said, I don't know where that came from. And she said, we got to talking about church and things like that. And sure enough, that lady came to church that next Sunday. And she came a few times, I think, after that. And she was so excited. She's like, I didn't think I could ever invite anybody to church. And I thought, you know what? Don't doubt yourself. Like, you can do great things for God. And for something to be a great thing for God, it doesn't have to be what we consider big. Just something like that. I mean, that's a big deal. Like, praise God that you were able to do that and be an influence on a person like that. Never take anything that we do for granted for God. God can use any of us in any way, right? And just because I don't serve the way somebody else serves doesn't mean that I'm not doing anything for God. So we can't hold each other to the same standard, if that makes sense. We all serve in our own way, right? And that's the main thing. So God used the Babylonians to do this. God uses a lot of people to do different things. Now here's something else I want to point out. He sets Jeremiah free here. And he says, you can go wherever you want to go. Jeremiah ends up choosing to go back to Judah to be with the people who are left there, the poor that the king of Babylon has left behind to tend those vineyards and crops. He said, I'm going to go back and be with them. Now, I read that, and I had to read it a couple times, I guess, before it really sort of started sinking into me, but I thought, that's a big deal for him to do this. Because he's told, if you go to Babylon with me, you will have a good life. But instead, he's like, I'm not going to go to Babylon. I'm going to go with these poor people. And remember, not only is he going to go live with poor people, but these poor people he's going to go live with are the ones who rejected him, that he'd been preaching to all this time, and they didn't want to listen to anything he had to say. He chooses to go with them anyway. And I think the reason he does that is because he's saying, you know what, these are God's people. How can I sit here and ignore God's people and just live it up in Babylon and have a good time? I want to be with God's people and help them. Even though that probably wasn't easy. The easy thing to do would be just go to Babylon. You know, folks, it's not always going to be easy to be with God's people. We think, oh, they're God's people. They ought to be the easiest getting along with people ever in the world. Have you not read what happened in Jeremiah? Does that look like they were easy to get along with when they're putting him down in that cistern and he comes out nothing but skin and bones? That was God's people. Sometimes God's people will crucify you. But we've got to learn that, you know what? I still want to be with God's people. I mean, you look at the New Testament, all the churches and stuff that Paul dealt with, like Galatia and Corinth and Ephesus and all these other churches, they did him wrong sometimes. they questioned Paul. They challenged him. They said things about him, but he still said, what comes upon me daily is the care for all the churches. I still love them. You know what? You can't just say, well, I'll be with God's people only when it's convenient and good for me and I'm having a good time with them. You got to be with God's people through thick and thin. You know, this is a commitment. We're part of the bride of Christ. Like, it's kind of how it works, right? And I look at Jeremiah and I'm like, that's kind of inspirational. Like, I wouldn't have blamed him if he decided, hey, man, I'm going to Babylon. The enemies of God's people are better than you. I'm going with them. It's better there. Like, I wouldn't have blamed him if he did that, right? You know, but instead he chose to say, I'm going to go be with these people. They're poor. They're scratching a living out here, but I'm going to go and stay with them. So, like I said, it's kind of something to think about there. But any thoughts, questions, anything anybody wants to add to what we've studied here so far?
Yeah, I am impressed that Jeremiah stayed too because of the way the people treated him. But that also shows his love for the people and that he really wanted them to come to God and that was his love. But to me, it shows too that he made the choice to be with the people there instead of going to Babylon. To me, it's easier sometimes to leave a situation rather than stay and be there for the people that are there. A lot of times, I call it, we want to take our football and leave. Like these people, some of them were captured and taken to Babylon. Actually, quite a few. But a lot of them ran to Egypt and other places, and they try to escape God. We need to understand that we need to stick with the God's people, even though the situation may be very difficult at times. To me, we want to desert a sinking ship a lot of times instead of sticking it out and being there. Even though the people might not listen to me or anyone, I'm going to be there so that if they want to come and talk to me, I can be there. If I'm not there, then there's no one for them to lean on. And to me, we forget, most of us want people to come and talk to us all the time, or whatever, about all the different problems, instead of understanding that we just need to be there, be a light, just be there for when they do want to talk, because they don't want to talk all the time, but when they do want to talk, it's nice to have someone there that they can talk with.
Yeah, be somebody that they can listen to, you know, yeah. Like you said, we don't want to just abandon what we think is a sinking ship. It might not really be sinking. It might just need a little help along, right?
We all know that Jesus can climb up on a sinking ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Peter,
Mm-hmm.
this week's talking about now. Chapter 27, verse 6.
Yeah, that's it. 27:6. Yep. Yep, I was trying to remember that verse this week, and I looked it up. Yep. Well, any other thoughts or comments on anything? Okay, so look at verse 7. We'll read a little bit more here. Verse 7. Chapter 40. Yeah. Chapter 40, verse 7. When all the captains of the forces in the open country and their men heard that the king of Babylon had appointed Gedaliah, the son of Echem, governor in their land, and had committed to him men, women, and children, those of the poorest of the land who had not been taken into exile to Babylon, they went to Gedaliah at Mitzvah, Ishmael the son of Nethanim, Jonan the son of Kareah, Sariah the son of Timoneth, the sons of Iphi, the Nephalite, Jerzan, the son of Mechatite, they and their men. Gedaliah and Achim, the son of Shaphan, swore to them and their men, saying, Do not be afraid to serve the Chaldeans. Dwell in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be well with you. As for me, I will dwell at Mitzvah to represent you before the Chaldeans who will come to us. But as for you, gather wine and summer fruits and oil, and store them in your vessels, and dwell in your cities that you have taken. Likewise, when all the Judeans who were in Moab and amongst the Ammonites and in Edom in their lands heard that the king of Babylon had left a remnant in Judah and had appointed Gedaliah the son of Achim, son of Shaphan, as governor over them, then all the Judeans returned from all the places to which they had been driven and came to the land of Judah to Gedaliah at Mitzvah, and they gathered wine and summer fruits in great abundance. Okay. So when Babylon attacked, like it says here, a lot of the people kind of ran away and hid. But once they hear that the attack is over and that things have settled down in Jerusalem and Judea, and that the king of Babylon is taking care of the people left behind there, and that they have these vineyards and crops and things to take care of, many of them come out of hiding and they come back there. And Gedaliah, who's the governor, just sort of encourages them. He says, hey, look, just do what the Babylonians tell you to do. You know, they've appointed me, to be in charge of everything. The best thing we can do is just grow these crops, take care of all this stuff. Don't try to fight against the Babylonians. Just accept where we are. Do your work. Don't cause trouble, right? And so all these people come back to Jerusalem, come back to Judea, and they help out with all this. So the good news is, and kind of like I mentioned earlier, it's one of these things where even in the middle of punishment, God still gives hope. And you see that many times throughout the Bible. In fact, the very first time that God ever punished humanity in the Garden of Eden, when Adam and Eve sinned, God still gave them hope. Now, the part of that we remember is when God cast them out of the garden, kicked them away from the tree of life. He told them that the ground was going to bring forth thorns and all this stuff, and they were going to have to work in the sweat of their brow to eat food and all this. We remember that about the Garden of Eden and the Adam and Eve being cast out. But what we often forget is that after God cast them out, didn't He give them coats of skin? Like, I'm not going to let you guys be naked. I'm going to take care of you, cover you, keep you warm. Of course, those coats of skin kind of imply a sacrifice was made for them, because how else are you going to get skins rather than killing an animal? So that was kind of a sign of hope. That was foreshadowing Jesus. And in chapter 3, verse 15, God even told Eve, He said, you're going to have a seed, a descendant, who will come and he will crush the head of the serpent. So even in the middle of all their punishment, God was giving them comfort and God was giving them hope. You go a little further along in history, there was a time when the Israelites, after they had left Egypt, they disobeyed God, and as punishment, God sent these serpents to bite the people. But what did God do to help them with that? He told Moses to make this bronze serpent and put it on a pole, and if you had been snake bit, you could look at that and you'd be healed. So what was God doing? He was giving them hope in the middle of their punishment. God does that a lot with us. And as I think back to my own life, I realize that in many ways my parents kind of did that with me when they would punish me. Like, I would get spankings as a kid, but even after I got a spanking, my mom and dad would still let me know that they loved me, They would give me hope even through all the discipline that I got. And I'll never forget this. I don't even know if my dad remembers this or not, but one day he was gone to work, and I did something that Mom didn't like. And I don't even remember what it was, but something she didn't like. And as soon as Dad comes home, she starts saying, you need to spank that boy. He's done this, that, and that. Well, Dad didn't think it was worth getting spanked over. He's like, he doesn't need to be spanked because of that. That wasn't a big deal, blah, blah, blah. But my mom was determined I needed to get spanked. So Dad said, okay, come on. He took me in the other room, and he got this old belt, and he bent me over the bed, and he was like, on me just like that. He said, okay, you got spanked. In other words, he just did that so he could say to Mom, yeah, I hit him with the belt, and just get it over with. Now, that might sound cruel to people today, the thought of, well, you mean your parents spanked you with a belt? Like, in that moment, it was nothing, but there's other times where they actually spanked us. You might say, your parents sound cruel. Look, man, my parents didn't spank me enough. Don't tell them I said that, but I look back on that, I'm like, you should have spanked me more than you did, They weren't cruel to us by any means, but they did discipline us. And I don't blame them for it now as I look back. As a kid, I did blame them for it, but as an adult, I understand, yeah, you know what, I did have that coming. But, that's the way it is with God. God disciplines us, but He still loves us. And that's what Hebrews chapter 12 talks about. God disciplines those whom He loves. That's the way it was with here with the people of Judah. He was disciplining them because He loved them. It wasn't because He was just deciding to be mean. Like, I'm God and I can do whatever I want. I think I just want to punish you people. No, He was doing it to help them in the end, right? And He loved them all the way through it. And having them take care of these vineyards and things, giving them this, was a way of showing, I still love you. You're going to come out of this. It's going to be okay.
You know what my dad always said? It hurts me more, it's gonna hurt you. Don't do it, Dad.
Yeah. This hurts me more than it does you. Are you sure about that? Anyway, anybody have anything they want to add to any of this here so far?
On that, like you were just talking about, and this year, leaving a big remnant of people there to take care of the land and all that, and then the Lord giving us salvation, although the Bible does tell us that many are called, but few are chosen, and great is the, big is the gate that goes to destruction, and narrow the one that God's got to have a remnant of people that will be good or be His or be saved or something. Because if He don't, He's a total failure with His own standards and in the universe and everything. If He was just to totally destroy mankind, he'd have to say, the best idea I ever have was to make myself children's, but they're all total, I'm 100% failure at it. I think His own pride, His own self-interest makes Him leave a remnant. If Henry Ford would have tried to make a car, say, and every single thing was wrong, there wasn't one piston that worked or one wheel that was round, he'd be a total failure. But he made some duds, but he didn't quit. Because he wanted his idea to go on, and it turned out he was quite a success. I just kind of made part of that up, but every inventor that comes along that is pretty sure he's got a solid idea, and God's the ultimate inventor, if there is such a thing, and He would have to, when that doctrine that man is totally depraved after Eve ate that apple or whatever, that's saying that God was a total 100% failure. And He ain't going to allow that. I can understand it that way. He's got some pride. He wants to seek and save that which was lost.
Yeah.
Not to just say I was a total failure.
Yeah, in other words, when humanity messes things up, God still finds that remnant, and He's still able to turn things around. Just like Noah in the flood, all humanity was evil, but He still found Noah and his family. They were righteous, and He restarted everything with them, So He's always able to find the good and bring it out and encourage that.
That theme is over and over through your Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, anything else anybody wants to add?
There were only 8 people that got on the ark.
Yeah, 8 people. Noah and his family. Yep. Okay, we'll read a little bit further here. We'll pick up with verse 13. Jeremiah 40, verse 13. Now Johanan the son of Kara and all the leaders of the forces in the open country came to Gedaliah at Mizpah and said to him, Do you know that Baalis, the king of the Ammonites, has sent Ishmael the son of Nethan to take your life? But Gedaliah the son of Achim would not believe them. Then Johanan the son of Karen spoke secretly to Gedaliah at Mizpah. Please let me go and strike down Ishmael the son of Nethiah, and no one will know it. Why should you take your life, so that all the Judeans who are gathered about you would be scattered, and the remnant of Judah would perish? But Gedaliah the son of Achim said to Johanan the son of Kara, You shall not do this thing, for you are speaking falsely of Ishmael. Okay, so a man named Johanan, he was one of the officers in the Judean army. He warns the governor of Judah, Gedaliah. He warns him. He says, hey, look, Ishmael the Ammonite has been sent, and he's going to come and kill you. And he's going to do a lot of harm to us. Let me go and kill him before any of this stuff happens. Well, Gedaliah just does not believe him. He says, this report that you've heard is false. The Ammonites aren't going to do anything to us. Well, if you read ahead in chapter 41, you find out this report was not false, because Ishmael of the Ammonites does come and he does do a lot of damage. We'll talk about that later. But to Gedaliah, this is just a false report. This is just a rumor, essentially, that he doesn't want to listen to. Now, why does he think it's a rumor? Why does he not want to listen to it? I don't know. Maybe he just had the attitude of, and we do this today, don't we? If there's some news that we don't like to hear, what do? We just sort of ignore it. You know? Yeah, we tune it out. And turn the TV off or something. But this makes me think about things like spreading rumors and spreading gossip. Because essentially that's what he thought this was. He's like, this is just some rumor. This can't be true. Let me tell you this. Do you want to know why people spread rumors about others, or why they gossip? Have you ever noticed that we don't really gossip about people that we like? Like if there's somebody that we truly care about, we don't go around spreading rumors about them. If you really love your mama, you don't go around telling people, hey, I heard my mama's doing this. Like, you don't do that if you really love your mom. We spread rumors about people generally that we don't like. Rumors and things are ways of passive-aggressively hurting somebody. And I think you know what I'm talking about. It's ways that we subtly try to hurt people that we consider to be our enemies. Well, I know that that's wrong. Gossip and rumor and all that. I know that stuff's wrong because the Bible says we're supposed to love our enemies rather than say all these bad things about them, right? Love your enemies. Help them. Give them a cup of cold water if they're thirsty. Doing rumors and gossip is the opposite of that. It's totally different. And let me also warn you about this. This is sort of a subtle way that Christians try to sneak in gossip sometimes and make it seem okay. During prayer, we think we can gossip about somebody when we're praying about them, and it's okay. So we're going to be leading prayer